started now. It's a couple of minutes after 6. Welcome everyone to our final panel of Shifting Design, the first free and virtual design summit of 2022, proudly brought to you by the Deputy Design Team. I am your host, Lisi Schappi. I'm Senior Director of Design at Deputy, and I'm so excited about our panel, Scaling Impactful Design Teams, tonight. Before I get into things, I'd love to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land I'm joining you from today, and that's the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and we acknowledge their continued connection to this beautiful land that I'm joining you from. I'd love people to get in the chat and share where they're joining from tonight. Something that's been really awesome to see throughout this whole week is we've had people joining from many different countries, and that's really what Shifting Design is all about. At the outset, we wanted to bring the design community together. We wanted to enable people to share and connect, share their challenges and experiences, and ultimately walk away super motivated and inspired in your design roles or future design roles. So what a week it's been. On Monday, we kicked things off with our Grow with the Flow theme, and we talked all things shifting into a role in product design. And then on Tuesday, our theme was Break Your Grid, and we had several conversations around being an influential and impactful product and brand designer. And some highlights I think that came through were the importance of building authentic relationships, tapping into your business mindset, and we talked time and time again about the value of mentorship. And there was a lot of love for ADP List, one of our partners. And we had Felix Lee on one of our panels as well. Everyone really recognized how great ADP List has been for connecting people all around the globe. And now we come to today, Show the Way. We kicked things off earlier today with a panel moving into management and shared discussions and experiences around really taking on that first role in management. Now here we are, our last panel, and I am joined by some of my favorite design leaders in the tech industry from, I think, you know, it's safe to say Australia's much loved tech companies, and I can't wait to introduce you to them. But before I do, just quickly, feel free to follow us. Actually, please go and follow us on Designing Deputy on Instagram. In case you've missed any of the panels or events this week, we have a number of the IG live recordings already there, available for you to watch, and we'll be pushing out content over the next couple of weeks as well, including the recordings of these panels. Okay, I will stop talking so much, but I'm going to introduce our speakers. Feel free to jump in the chat and show them some love. So first up, we have Sami, Sloane, Head of Design at SafetyCulture. Then we have Krystalyn De Mesa, Senior Director of Product Design at CM Group. Next, we have Dineth Mapa, who is Director of Product Design at Airwallex. And last but not least, Tim Yeo, who is Design Director at IBM. And also, I think, Tim, this is probably one of my favorite titles I've ever heard, Chief Introvert at The Quiet Achiever. I'm seeing lots of love coming through in the chat, which is just so lovely as well. So just a reminder, you can submit questions throughout this panel. Just use the Q&A box in Zoom. We're going to do our best to get to them throughout the whole session. If we don't answer them all, we'll think of a way to answer them later on. Okay, so let's get into the intros. I'm just going to be really quick because I'm sure you're all sick of me talking. Lizzie, as I mentioned before, Senior Director of Design at Deputy. I've been at Deputy for 10 years now, almost a decade, which is just crazy. And I started off as one of 3 designers, and now I'm so fortunate to lead a very passionate team of global product designers, brand designers, and researchers. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to you, Dineth. tell us a bit about yourself and your team.
Sure. Hi, everybody. First of all, great to be here. Thanks for having me on such a talented panel. So such a pleasure to be here. So I'm Dineth, as Lisi introduced. I head up design for Airwallex. I've been at Airwallex now for about a year and a half. Feels like about 10 years, but about a year and a half. And previous to that, I led a couple of design teams at Airbnb in San Francisco for around 6 years. And before that, I led design for Xero in the US and a couple of teams back in Melbourne, back a long time ago now, before my hairs were this grey. Yeah, what else would you like me to say? Sorry, Lisi?
Tell us a bit about your team.
Oh yeah, sure, sorry. Yeah, so I've lost complete context. So yeah, my team here at Airwallex is grown. It's grown a lot over the last, I guess, year and a half. And, you know, we've gone through a lot of changes. And I think it's apt, this particular conversation about scaling design, because as the business has grown, you know, the hiring and the kind of people we bring on has also changed. So got a really talented team of product designers, marketing and branding designers, design systems person. And this year we're looking to get more like research and content strategy. So we're adding that next layer of, I guess, finesse to our product. And I think that's, you know, and then when you compare that to, say, Airbnb, where we had 450 designers when I left, it's a very, very different world. But I think the point is that, you know, when we talk about scaling, it really depends on the stage of your business, and really understanding that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dineth. I'm going to hand it over to you, Krystalyn. Tell us a bit about yourself and your team.
Absolutely. So firstly, Lisi and Deputy, thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to be part of this like amazing and kick-ass group of people, and, you know, being able to give back to the design community. I think it's something we're all really passionate about. So I'm Krystalyn. I am the Senior Director of Product Design for CM Group. So CM Group is a portfolio of marketing brands and technologies. We often refer to ourselves as a family of brands and technologies, because to us, you know, relationships and how we work is really important. You know, I have the absolute privilege of leading an amazing global design team. A couple have joined today as well. So shout out to all of you. Thank you for supporting. You know, really great team. You know, we are really passionate, but also growing. You know, we started as just one brand and one product, and now it is, gosh, 5 years down the track since I joined the company. It is now, I think, 10 brands and 10 products, and bringing together the design team and design community under one design org. So hopefully I can share a little bit of insight into my journey, what I've learned, where I've stumbled, and, you know, hopefully some of that wisdom you can take away into your teams as well.
Amazing, Krystalyn. Sami, I'm going to hand it over to you now to share a bit about yourself and your team.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisi. And a huge congrats, guys. This week has been amazing. You have done a stellar job. I have loved every minute of it. And I'm just so happy to be here, especially with you guys. This panel is amazing. I can't actually believe I'm on it, because I'm like so excited to listen to the conversation. So thank you all. And shout out to the SafetyCulture crew on the line. Love you guys so much. But my journey, I've been leading design teams since 2016, which isn't that long ago, but feels like a long time ago, and have loved it ever since. I was in medtech before I came to SafetyCulture, scaling design there and bringing a lot of new products to our healthcare landscape, which was really exciting. And then, you know, before leading design, I was a designer for many years over in LA and Sydney, in agency and client side. But now today I'm at SafetyCulture, and we are growing a pretty amazing design team there under the bonnet. We're leveling up our design org this year, and we're taking a lot of key things really seriously, like our design system designers. We're looking into standing up research ops this year. We're looking at building out our creative brand marketing arm, and getting all of this stuff so our whole ecosystem starts to sing the same song. We've got a huge year ahead of us. We've had a huge 7 months already. Our product design team has almost tripled in size since starting in September. So it's been quite a ride, but super excited.
Wow, talk about scaling a team. That's incredible, Sami. All right, Tim, I'm going to hand it over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself and your team.
Well, before that, Lisi, congratulations on the event. Hands down to you. It's been an amazing event so far. I'm Tim Yeo, And I've been a designer for the last 16 years. And I started out as a designer as well. Back in the day, 16 years ago, UX wasn't even a thing yet. But that's where I began. Right now, I am a design director at IBM. We're a team of 50 plus practitioners across Australia within the customer transformation practice. So our whole thing is embedding cross-functional teams within enterprise clients, moving at startup speed. When people think about IBM, the perception of IBM, when I talk about IBM, is really the ThinkPad laptop, but really that's been a side of the business that's been sold since 2004. And the next surprising thing when I tell people that IBM has a global footprint of roughly 2,500 designers, and that's just designers alone. People don't know. People just don't realize that there's that number of designers working within IBM. One of our VPs of design, Doug Powell, who recently left, I remember on the back of his wall, he had this massive wall of just Post-it notes. And when you look at it closely, it's really just an org chart, just trying to see where people are, what they're responsible for, and how people can work together at that size or scale. It just, even today, it just boggles my mind. Prior to IBM, my own experience has been on the smaller end of the scale in startups. In fact, 3 of them, firstly at OFX that does money transfer, and then Prosper that does business loans, and then more recently at Finder, where my experience has really been in setting up from a design team of 1 up to, I think at its largest, 50.
Yeah, wow, thanks, Tim. I might continue with you actually and ask you, how did you land your first role in design leadership?
There was a job. There was a job ad. I applied. I met them, and I got the job. I think that was really it. I think for a long time, I've always felt like I wanted to lead and have my own thing. I felt like that. I think for many of you as well, I felt like I wanted to give back. I had the privilege and the luck of having really good managers before. And I just reached that stage of the career where I felt like, yeah, I've learned enough. And I feel like I'm ready to actually give back and make my own thing, where the thing was not just pixels or design, but a team of people. So that's really what drove me to apply for that first job. It was a very steep learning curve. I think one of the things I realized was the things that got me there are not the things that will get me to where I want to go. I didn't go to a design management school for design leaders. I don't think that even existed at the time. I think even today, there are probably a few places, a handful of places that will help you get there. But a lot of the learning, just like design itself for me, has been learning by doing. So that's really where my journey started.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I definitely had a completely opposite experience. I fell into it and stumbled my way through. Sami, I feel like we've bonded on this before. Do you want to share how you landed your first role in leadership?
Yeah, it was definitely being in not the right place at the right time, yes, but just identifying, the opportunity in front of you. And for me, it was more, I just need to get this job done. And it really organically grew from that. And whether it was helping with hiring or, stepping up a little bit more to contribute to strategy or direct some things that we should be doing. And it just sort of organically grew. But I think on the flip side, I've had 7 powerhouse managers from that point, probably since before that point. And they play such a key role in it, in terms of coaching you, mentoring you, pushing you a little bit, but then, being a safe place for you too. So I had a really great circle of leadership who let me fail, who guided me, who watched me fail, knowing that I would fail and learn. But it was definitely a fall into it, sink or swim situation. And yeah, back then there wasn't any, go to a course and learn how to be a design manager. It was very much learn as you go. So similar to you, Tim. And yeah, I guess that's it.
Nice.
Now
And
here we are.
We'll talk about failures and mistakes just in a moment. But Krystalyn, do you want to share how you landed your first design leadership role?
Sure. So I'm going to actually talk about sort of my second one, because I think that's sort of where like I think most of the lessons have been learnt. And so, prior to, working at CM Group, I actually worked in banking and finance and had, a bit of a leadership role there. And I transitioned because, it wasn't, I was looking for something else. And then when I was looking to transition, the hiring manager at the time, for where I am now, I remember having a really honest conversation going like, I know like you're looking for a senior, but what I ultimately want to be is like, I want a team lead role. I want a leadership role. And I was really open about it. And so, took that role, and, what I ended up doing was, trying to operate in the role that I wanted, and really showing that I was capable, even though I had no idea what I was doing, just trying things, working with people, really having that people aspect of things. And then, eventually I took that first design team lead role. And then, after that, I think Lisi, a little bit similar to you, was then I was thrust into a director role, and it was like, oh, okay, this is a completely different realm again. And so I think for me, it was like wanting to do it, but then the want versus being there and, having people that you are growing, and then having people that you're responsible for, but also, that, you want to evolve, like that's a completely different thing. And, I think, Sami, as you said, learning by doing is a really, really big thing. You very quickly learn what works. You learn when to trust your gut as well. And I think that becomes a really big thing that, you refine those skills as you go along, and your intuition, it plays more and more a big part into, how you are as a designer, but also how you are as a leader as well.
Yeah, definitely. So Dineth, do you want to share how you landed your first design?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of similar to you, Lisi and Sami. I think, well, first of all, I think it's really, you can't underestimate how important a really good manager is. So I think that's a common theme. And so it was the same for me. I had a really great manager, and she was brilliant. And I used to look at her and think, oh man, what a hard job she has. And I'd be silly to take a role like this because, I'd have no time for myself. So I was not naive knowing that what was required to be a manager. I just didn't know if I wanted to do that. I was happy kind of cruising, to be honest, in my career. And then she decided to leave and change careers and do something else. And she said, oh, by the way, I kind of nominated you to take this role. I was like, me? Well, I'm not sure about that. And then it kind of came back to bite me on the backside, because I said yes, but then I found out a little later on, it wasn't the team I was managing, wasn't the one that I was in. It happened to be at Airbnb, and it was anti-discrimination, city regulations, and accessibility, which were like really hard teams to jump into. So I just didn't have time to like worry or fear, because it's like being thrown into the deep end. So that was like kind of my first real experience when it comes to leading a pretty serious teams.
I love it. We've all sort of touched on this idea of making mistakes, facing challenges, and certain experiences in our early leadership. Does someone want to jump in and give an example of one which essentially helped shape your leadership style or values? So you all thinking. Krystalyn, I know you want to.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off. So I think, timely in terms of what I shared before as well, in terms of coming from a certain industry and then transitioning sort of back into more like tech land, which I love. And so I remember, I love feedback. I love getting feedback because, like, for me, really open to it. And I remember there was some feedback that I was given many, many years ago in a previous industry. And the feedback, and this was part of performance reviews as well, was that this person felt like my approach was too fun. And I was like, okay, so I took that on. I'm like, cool, happy to take on feedback. Let me unpack that. And then, what I arrived at was that, for me, like, I want to continue to stay true to myself. And so for me, trying not to be collaborative, inclusive, and really bringing people on the journey, that's who I am, and that's how I work. And so, if it doesn't work for some people, that's fine. And so what I decided to do was like, I want to stay true to myself. And so not too long after that, I decided to shift industries where, I could still be myself. I could still be fun, but also serious, of course, when you need to be. And, often what I think about is, I always try to stay true to my authentic self, but you wear different hats. Like you call on different versions of yourself when it's needed. Like, when you need to give honest feedback to your team, that is one version of yourself. Or when you're like running a workshop, that's another version of yourself. Or when you're in an executive meeting, that is a completely different version of yourself. But at the core, it's all still me. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned that's really shaped myself as a leader and how I continue to work with my teams, but also other teams around me, is that like, I want to stay true to me, because it's too hard trying to be someone else. It's exhausting.
I just find that so inspirational and relatable. I definitely experienced the same thing. Told I was too nice at times as well. But definitely when I just decided to embrace my authentic self, it was just a game changer. And I know, Tim, that's something you're really passionate about as well, authentic leadership. Do you want to talk to us about your thoughts around that, and particularly around being an introverted leader?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about obstacles and failures, I can think of two things. For me, early in my leadership journey, the first thing I learned was to put people over pixels and process. People come first. I think for many designers, that comes naturally because we design for people. But learning to let go, when you hire people, let them do the job. That's why you hired them. Know when to give feedback, know when to step in, know when to help them to clear any blockers that they might have. But then also know when to step away. Not everything is going to be perfect. Sometimes people have to make mistakes on their own in order to grow. But they won't grow if you are always there to stop them from falling. Some falls are okay, you might get a bruise and that should be okay. Some falls would be, catastrophic. But you have to let people have the chance to go on their own journey and grow and develop so that they can become the people that they want to be. And always to pick people over pixels and process. For me, that was the first thing. For me, the second one was a much more personal one, where it's more about the perception of what a leader looks like. So you've mentioned this before, I'm an introvert, right? That's who I am. But the picture of what a leader looks like, culturally, socially, is not me. I always myself even have this picture in my head that a leader is an extrovert, right? They can stand in front of large audiences. You have a speech to give, I'll give it for you right now. That's the picture of what a leader looks like. And that's not me. And for a very long time, in addition to things like not going to a design leadership school, I mean, it didn't even exist at the time. All this imposter syndrome, all this just really tapped into, me feeling like, I'm not ready for this job, that I can't do it. And, like what Catherine shared earlier, for a long time, I pretended. If I knew there was going to be a big presentation the next day, I remember I used to watch Steve Jobs' keynotes, and then I'll try and take cues, see how he pauses, how he uses silence to really emphasize point. And I learned from those things. But for a long time, I pretended, I tried to be someone else. And, after a while, it's so tiring. And then after a while, I just said, no, that's it. I'm tired of pretending. I'm going to find my own version of leading. And how is it I can have impact? So that might be, maybe it's not giving speeches all the time, finding ways to communicate, your direction asynchronously, might be recording a Loom video and sharing it company-wide rather than making a presentation. There are ways you can form your own path. There is no one picture of what a leader looks like. So it's really only when I realized that for myself, that I felt like that I was being authentic and I came into my own.
Oh, Tim, I could listen to you talk all night about this. Seriously, I think we all could. Thanks for sharing. Dineth, did you want to share anything around authentic leadership and your experience with it?
Yeah, I think Tim hit a lot of those points. So, for me, it's very similar. I think, we talk often when we look at hiring and plans and roadmaps, we often look at like resources or headcount, but behind these things are people, people with careers and aspirations. It's really important to remember that. And unless if you're in the industry of like medical work or anything where you're not saving lives, like what we're doing is often, tech products that might help people save a bit of time here and there, save money. Most of our work is not really that, we're not saving lives, right? So it's important to remember that sometimes, because that does get lost sometimes, especially in these boardroom conversations. And that doesn't mean that like you don't care about what you do or it needs to be subpar, but it just means that like a little bit of context of what you're doing and why you're doing it. In my career, what I've forgotten, like, for example, like what I shipped 2 years ago, but I do remember the conversations I had with people, like the joke and the laughs and the people that I looked up to, and maybe some people that looked up to me. I do remember those kind of moments. And I think that's all we take with us in our career. So it's really important to remember that.
Definitely. Sami, did you want to add something?
I agree. I could listen to Tim all night. It was just amazing. I think, you mentioned people before pixels, and it's one massive principle I hold, especially with hiring and scaling, is people before portfolios. One thing for me, if I'm ever land on a portfolio website, the first place I go by principle is the about page, because I care about who you are as a human. I want to know, like, if you have a dog or what you do on the weekend. And it's so important. Someone once said to me, at the end of the day, we're all just bums in the shower, but I don't know if that's always so appropriate. But Felix said this week, we all have 24 hours in a day. And that really resonated with me, because something that's so true is everyone is going through something. And we're all just here doing what we love, trying to create beautiful things and try to belong and be a part of a team. So that's just something I really carry with me, and I really want to always connect on a human level. If it's someone that's just connected with me in an interview, or if it's someone that I've worked with for 4 years, I really want to connect as humans. And we spend so much time together, more time than we get to spend with our families. So we may as well spend time connecting and getting happiness out of that, and then creating magic as a bonus.
Oh, I love this chat. Could be a topic for a whole panel, right? So I just want to jump to a question I've seen in the Q&A from Bronwyn. Authenticity is great and something that I encourage, but how do you manage the bias of other people and what they expect from a leader? How do you make sure you're recognized as a leader if you don't feel the stereotype? So I'm going to jump in and answer that. Tim, I feel like really.
I think it depends what's your definition of a leader, right? And mine's always been a simple one, where a leader has followers. And it doesn't mean that you have to have the title of VP or head of, you got followers, you're a leader. You're leading people from point A to point B. You can do it as an IC, you can do it as a manager. It depends. That's all you need. So as long as the way that you do it, everyone finds their own way. But as long as you do it in an authentic way, because people can tell if you're faking it. Sooner or later, they can tell. Maybe they're not telling you, but it certainly wouldn't feel fun and rewarding till you do it the way that feels true to you. For me, that was my experience.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and dive into why we're all here tonight and talk about scaling impactful design teams. And I'm curious what you all think, like what actually makes an impactful design team and how does leadership come into it? Krystalyn, do you want to answer this one?
For sure. I think, as I mentioned before, like I've certainly been on a journey over the past couple of years, going from, leading one brand and one product to, close to 10 brands and products at the moment at CM Group. And it's a team of, when I first started, it was a small team, it was 3 designers. And now, when we're fully stacked, because we are hiring, there's 20 designers globally, at CM Group. And so in terms of, scaling that team and, what it requires from leadership, I think there's a couple of things. So one is, Tim said it before, it's people over pixels. I think the same goes with when you're scaling a team. It's like, something I shared with you maybe a couple of weeks ago, Lisi, was like, you should focus on people, not numbers. And so for me, it's really about, understanding where you're coming from. When you were that small team of 2 or 3, what really worked? Like, what did people love? Like, how did people feel? And then as you grow, like, focusing on that, like, it won't be the same, but taking, those things that were really working, taking those things that made people feel good and trying to sprinkle them into what is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then in addition to that, I think it's also, we were talking about, what is a picture of a leader? How do you need to lead? And I think when it comes to scaling a team, I think, there might be this notion of like, you just build it and, it will be what it needs to be. But I think what is often forgotten is that it's not about you as a leader, it's about the people in your team. And so for me, what I've really done is like, take my team on that journey, share what we want to do, have people input into what our vision is. So for example, when the CM product design group really came together, or the org came together last year, our first thing that we did was, gather as a team and go, what's our mission? I'm like, I might have an idea, but I don't want to push that onto all of you. I want all of us to really work on it and, finesse that and feel really good about it. And the thing that I said to my team is like, I want it to be something that you would be really proud to shout from the rooftops about. And so, the CM Group product design mission is crafting better together. 3 really simple words, but really powerful words when you unpack them. And so that is at the core of what we do. And so I think, focusing on people, what really works well, but then having that North Star as like for your team and having people input into it, I think it's been really powerful. And, that North Star will continue to drive as we continue to scale as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you were saying around, just like, it's all about people. Your whole, I guess, leadership philosophy is very people centric. And to quote, what you were saying before, Tim, people over pixels, people over process. But we know process, that dreaded word, is a necessity, particularly to, scale efficiently and effectively. Whether you're starting from scratch, starting a design function from scratch or rapidly scaling, it's still sort of important, right? So Sami, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on process.
It is such a yuck word. And I think in order to scale, you need the right amount. I never want to overprescribe anything or, put a bunch of process into a designer's life, because you need to provide room to grow and explore and wonder as well. But in order to equip the team to go through scaling, if we double in the next 3 months, we want everyone to be clear. Like, I think being clear and having the clarity of your role, where you're at, where you're going, what the team's doing, process can really facilitate that. It can help you understand, this is where we are right now, this is where we're going, this is why we're going. We have certain rituals in place that need to support us so we can remain aligned and remain on the same page. Like, we're driving the train as we're laying the tracks. And it's really important for us to constantly be aligned. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be aligned with a group of 30 people constantly. So you have to work for it. And processes really help that for us. We lean into rituals, and those rituals having really meaningful intentions about why we're meeting and what we'll be doing in that meeting, and what we want to get out of it. So for me, in my experience, the right amount of process is like a really good drink and adding ice.
I love that analogy. Now, you mentioned rituals. We will come back to that in a moment. I'm just keen to hear, Dineth, your thoughts around process, particularly since you were part of scaling the Airbnb team to 250. I'm sure there were processes you implemented to successfully do that.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll say about process, and I think Sam is absolutely right. Sometimes it does sound like a bit of a dirty word, and it seems like almost like there's so much like effort needs to go on it. But when you're in a company that's going so quickly, I think Sami used the analogy of a train that's going and you're laying the tracks, which is a perfect analogy for it. The only thing that really stands up is process. Unfortunately, it's just what you have to do, right? But one thing I will say about process is like, often I've seen, designers or design teams just go off on their own and do a process and come back and goes, okay, engineering and product management, this is the process, you have to follow this now. And that doesn't quite work, right? So to touch on the point of alignment, it's really important that your cross-functional teams are bought in on your process and they understand. And not all processes have to be the same. Like for a large project, you might have a very specific process. For a smaller project, you might have a smaller version of that. But what's really important is that you have one and you follow to a certain extent because that's the only way you're going to get consistency and you're going to find momentum and be able to have those checkpoints to make sure that things are moving forward well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, process is something that can really help us all, create these really consistent product and brand experiences and help us, make sure everything's high quality that we're producing too. Okay, so now to something a bit more fun. Sami, you mentioned rituals before, and Krystalyn, I know the CM group team have some pretty fun ones, so I'm really keen for you to share what they are.
I'm laughing because it might just be a me thing, but with all the rituals that we have, I am known for creating a lot of acronyms at CM Group, and so a lot of our rituals have acronyms. We have fun with it. So a couple of my favorite ones that we have at CM Group. So we have one called WAWO. It stands for What Are You Working On? And so essentially, the team meets once a week and you just share, Erica's onto it. So you just share what you're working on, and it's nothing hardcore, but it's just that, it's a once a week thing, it's scheduled. If you don't want to interrupt the team, and everyone is always very happy to be interrupted, but, you're always conscious of that. You have this standing time where the designers can come and just share exactly what they're working on. It doesn't even have to be finesse. It's like, hey, I'm just playing with this. I would love to get some feedback, or like, what do you think? That's been a really great one for the team. The other one that we have is, again, another acronym. So PURC, so PURC. It's our Product User Research Council. And so this was started a couple of years ago because, with the research that was being done by the product designers, we really wanted to make sure that we were socializing that, because all of those, user observations and insights that we were learning are so valuable to helping the rest of the business deeply understand customer needs and motivations and, what their problem and opportunity areas are. And so we started PURC, not just for the product team, but we have engineering come to, we have customer support, we have our account managers, marketing team, etc. And so it's the sort of once a month-ish session that we run to make sure that, we're sharing all of that out and we can start to action what we're learning as well. And the last one, which is a bit of a favorite across the business, is design sparring or design critique. I know lots of different teams run this, but we love it because, it's not just for product design. We really involve like product managers and engineers and anyone else who wants to come. And it's such a great opportunity for designers to share, again, what they're working on, but also to a broader audience. And, the other intention here is to build up the design maturity across the business as well. I think the more that we can share what we're doing, the value that we bring, and have people be part of those conversations, I think, people really start to understand like what is design and where do we play and what value do we add? And it just becomes like design just becomes part of the conversation organically because we're there as well. So they're just three, but they're some of our favorite ones at CM Group.
I love it. We're a big fan of cheesy names as well in the deputy design team. Our critique is called Design Critters.
I love it.
So how do we go about embedding rituals or process when people might be a bit reluctant to take them on board? Has anyone got any tips? Sami, what do you think?
Embedding rituals is hard because you're messing with a lot of people's schedule. And I think that's, everyone's time is equally as valuable. No one's time is more or less. And So I kind of try to be as purposeful as possible when you're injecting a ritual into someone's week. It's no easy feat, but I've been so lucky that, you know, I've got an incredibly amazing product design team who are just up for anything. And we are constantly evolving what these rituals for us look like, because we're growing. And so it needs to be valuable, needs to, you know, you need to walk away thinking, yep, cool, that was great, got what I needed to out of that session, and not waste anyone's time. But embedding them, I mean, it is small things, right? And I really love sweating the details in certain parts with naming conventions, like making the name exciting, playing music, like setting the vibe. There are all just these little things to engage a lot of people, but also I don't own all of our design rituals. We own them. So I try to throw out as much as possible, you know, like, let's like talk about how we can make this better. Is this working for everyone? We're not wedded to these rituals. And if they stop working, then we'll revisit them and evolve them and make them work for all of us, because we all need to get the most out of this. So that's a few things that I kind of lean into when setting and embedding new rituals for a team.
No, I love that. You know, we have to be flexible and be self-aware around whether something's not working or not, and be open to feedback around it from our team. So Krystalyn, you touched on something before around, you know, how can sort of design as a team, I guess, be more vocal and more present throughout the business. And I think that's such an interesting point to talk about. And I'm going to bring up that phrase, design having a seat at the table, the one that everyone loves talking about. And, you know, I would love to get into, what does that actually mean? And Tim, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this.
I think if you want to make design more influential in the company, it really comes down to, for me, 2 words, and they are business literacy. I think the conversation about having a seat at the table, having designers having a seat at the table, this has been going on for so long. And many of us, when we arrive at this table, you know, the conversation that we're having is not pixels, it's not app. For me, at least, it's what's your ROI, what's your OPEX, what's your COPEX, what's your CAPEX, your P&L statements, your shareholders, your OKRs. You know, that's the kind of conversation that they have at the tables that I've been at. And Patrick Lencioni, in his book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, probably said it best. You know, when you're at that level, at the head or VP level, your first team, you have 2 teams. And if you're head of a function responsible for design, your first team is probably going to be your people, your designers. But if you are at the executive level, your team, in my opinion, changes. Your first team are now your peers. Your CPO, your CFO, your CTO, they are your first team. And they are your teammates. Like in soccer, you might have a goalkeeper, a defender, and a striker. And the whole goal of the team is to win the game, is to help the business succeed. You know, arriving at the table, you know, being good at design, being able to run your team, that's just really table stakes. That's what got you there. But then once you're there at the table, it's not about, you know, it's more about how can you work together as a team, so that, you know, as a team, your first team, you can have a meal together. How do you learn to partner with your peers in other functions so that you can achieve business success? And if I'm quite honest, not sure I understand. And if I'm quite honest, you know, when I first encountered that, I was not business literate. I did not know what all these acronyms meant. I had to go learn what they mean. And until I learned them, it was then that I actually felt like, you know, I belong to that table to try and help the business be successful. But the truth is, you know, many people are still not there. Myself, I don't even feel like I'm there, that I'm fully business literate. But it's probably the most worthwhile discussion that we should be having.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can relate to that. I remember back in my early leadership days, I'd be in a meeting Googling, you know, ARR, what does that stand for? All these things. And I was like too scared to ask questions about it. But yeah, I mean, that sort of takes us nicely into our next question around design strategy. And how that really ties into having that seat at the table. I'd love us to share why design strategy is important and what it means. Dineth, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll just quickly touch on the design, the seat at the table thing as well to kind of tie it in a bit. I mean, I thought, coming senior into my career, I thought like someone will be polishing the chair for me at the table. I'll be walking in and goes, here's the seat at the table. Tell you what, it never happened, because the thing is that the seat at the table is never given to you. You kind of have to earn it, right? And you earn it by just what you talked about before, Lisi and Tim. It's around understanding business needs. It's not necessarily just design strategy, it's business strategy, right? Because there's business strategy, because we all need to make money as a business. And one of your differentiators of doing that is having a creative team or a design team that helps solve problems for this business in a creative way. So design strategy is extremely important, but it's even more important that the design strategy aligns with the business strategy. And there's buy-in from everyone, from your most junior designer, the CEO. There's alignment. Everyone knows how things ladder up. That's hard to do, but it is extremely important. So that's like a very, very high level way of explaining why I think design strategy is really important.
No, I love it. Absolutely. I mean, okay, so say you are starting from scratch. You're about to build out the design function. Where do you start? Like, from a design strategy perspective, what should someone's approach be in that first year? Does someone want to jump in and take this one?
I will have a crack. It's a really interesting topic, and I completely agree, Dineth, with everything that you just said. Where do you start? I mean, I always harness design thinking. I really, really do. But within that, there are so many pockets to that, balancing what the business needs to do, how the business will make money, versus what do our customers need? What's the problem space that we're filling and solving for? And I think it's a real art in balancing those two, because you don't want to be 100% business centric, and then being 100% customer centric might ignore the realities of the business. And then this design strategy needs to ladder up to the business strategy as well. So there are multiple sort of areas to consider, but for me, it's very much harnessing design thinking and going through a process of ideating it and letting myself, converge and diverge and all of those fabulous things. And that's where the real designer in me will come out. And that's why I love that type of work within my role. But yeah, for me, it's that fine art of balancing the business and the customer and the problem space.
Yeah, definitely. And like you just touched on, we may not be, pushing pixels and actively on the tools anymore, but we're still following that process when we're designing rituals, designing a strategy and scaling the teams. That's definitely the part I love about it as well. Krystalyn, I know you have some thoughts around this too. Do you want to share?
Yeah. So when the CM product design team was putting together, our mission and also our strategy, we really wanted to make sure it was aligned to the business, because, we are one family and, we operate as one family as well. And so, once we had what we really wanted to hold close to our hearts, and that thing that people really wanted to shout from the rooftops, which is crafting better together, what we often do is when we are sharing that, not just within our team, not just within product, but with other functions across the business as well, we often pair it with the overall business, our company-wide business strategy as well, or the group-wide business mission, which is a home for every marketer. And so therefore, often when we're sharing, what our story and our journey is, it's like, cool, we start from the top, which is a home for every marketer, and we talk about what that means. And then it's like, okay, well, as product design, this is how we operate. It's crafting better together. And these are our core pillars for, FY22, for example, that really help to drive that top level mission from a group level as well. And so, showing the connection between the two, I think, is really important, because, you're not creating a team in a vacuum. You're creating a team to really support the rest of the business and, supporting whatever the goals are and the, OKRs or KPIs are for the business. And going back to something that Tim said around, influencing or having that seat at the table for leadership, I think one of the really key things that we've learned, and certainly that I always have back of mind, is learning to speak the same language, as the people that you work with, your peers. Because, often, when you talk design or design strategy, how you would talk about it, as a designer at heart, and how you would talk about it to your design team is very different. And it might not land with, say, an engineer or with your CEO. And certainly, when I have talked to our CEO and like other C-levels, I have to tweak what language I use. I have to tweak how I position what design does, because, talking about, hey, we want to make things like, seamless and beautiful. What does that, how do you translate that in terms of like business impact? And so I think that alignment to strategy to your bigger group or company level, but also learning to speak that language with them as well. It's really important. And that's how it feels connected. And that's how you get that seat at the table, and how you can continue to drive the ability to scale design in the business as well.
Just such great insights there, Krystalyn. I love what you're saying about connecting the work you're doing back to even like the company vision and mission as well. It's something we try to do in our team when we're sharing our work. We're like, okay, what have I done in the last couple of months that's really going to impact our company mission and vision? Nice. I'm just checking time. We have 7 minutes left. And there is one question that I'm excited to get from the Q&A. What is one thing you wish you could go back and tell yourself before you became a leader, or in the early days of your leadership journey? I'm giving you all a moment to think because I see you all brewing over this question. Tim, you open to answering this one?
I'm conscious that I've been speaking a lot as well. Anyone else want to go first? Or if I could go back in time, I would probably tell myself that being you is enough. That don't try to be anyone else. You'll only be pretending. Just show up as who you are. If it's not the right place, you'll find somewhere else. You can try, do your best. It's a job. You go to work, you do it, you go home, you live your life. And that's it. Sometimes we get so, that association between your role, your job, your title, and who you are, it can be very unhealthy when it's so intertwinkled that it's not separable. And then when you fail at your job and you feel like you are doing poorly at your role, you feel like you are personally a failure. And that's not true, and, don't try to be anybody else. Be yourself, do the best job that you can. And then you learn. That's why it's a journey. People don't expect you to be perfect on day one. And so, don't be so hard on yourself.
That's just really beautiful. I mean, the fact is we're all continuing to learn. We don't know everything. Just because you have the title doesn't mean you're the expert. I'm making mistakes and learning every day. And I think that's just something that we can all take away, is don't be too hard on yourself. I love it. Okay, we just got another question coming through. I would love to know, when you're all building your teams, what do you look for when making hiring decisions? I mean, this is so topical because I know all of us on this call are hiring right now, and it'd be so valuable for the audience to hear this. Sami, do you want to?
Sure. So much of the job and the role is hiring a lot. Like, so sometimes I'm like, am I a recruiter now? Like, I can do this. No, I mean, what I look for in all hires, I have a really strong vision of my team, and all of the beautiful different strengths, weaknesses, characters, personalities, everything in that team. And I'm really protective of that. I really love the people that I work with every day. And so I look for, what is this person's unique value? What is their why? And does their why fit in with what we're building here? I really love to know why designers do what they do. Why do they love solving problems? I also want to know what your personal values are. What do you do on Saturday morning? What is you? Because I will be bringing you into a group of people that I care really deeply about. And we're building something really diverse. And, you know, it's like that rocks that polish each other. We're all about that. So when I'm hiring, I'm thinking of my team and how this person who I'm speaking with, who I've never met before and I'm interviewing, what their values are and how that would go coming into our team.
Yeah, that's really lovely. Dineth, what about you?
Yeah, I think Sami hit a lot of those points home as well. But I think without people, you can't do anything. You can have the best design strategy, you could have the really ambitious goals, but if you don't have good people, you won't go anywhere, right? So, as Sami said, you do have to invest the time into finding the right people. It's really important. If you get a good person, it will really help elevate your whole team. If you don't get the right fit, it could go the other way as well, right? And then you also set the whole team back a lot. So it's really important that you spend the time to find the right person. But in terms of, I've had a lot of people over the last, 5-6 years. And one thing for me that really stands out is always attitude over skills. Skills is something you can learn, but attitude is really hard to change. And it's really especially important when you're a growing team, having that flexibility, people who can, fall down but get back up, be able to adapt, be able to, I think Krystalyn mentioned before about framing things, being able to frame things in a way of saying, hey, we don't have the support for this, but can we do it this way, to do it, rather than saying, well, we don't have support, we can't do it. Having that attitude is what really, really helps, people grow and teams grow. And secondary to that, people who are, have a good attitude tend to work better with other people as well. And that's really, really important because, building good product is definitely a team sport. It's not an individual game. So you really need, people who can work with each other, understand there's limitations, understand that different people have different working styles, and being able to understand that, but then also work together for a common goal outcome I think is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot believe we are almost at the hour. Time has flown. I could be here for another few hours. It's crazy. But to wrap it up, I would love to know, what's your next focus as a design leader? What's something you and the team are focusing on next? Krystalyn.
So one of the things that I'm really passionate about, for my team is, carving out opportunities and pathways, and what's next for them. And so, right now it's working with all of them to understand, what are their goals, what are their aspirations, and, what do they want to be? And then how do I enable that? How do I open up opportunities for them? How do I support them? What else can I do? Because I think for me, and I think people has been a really key theme through this whole panel, whether it comes down to hiring, whether it be about process, whether it be about scaling, I think it's always come back to people. And so for me, that's what I'm really focused on. So, for me as a lead, it's not about me, it's about how I can level up my team to then, follow whatever their pathway is, whether it be craft, whether it be people, whether it be at the company. And sometimes it might not be with my company as well. And that's okay as well. And, I think having the openness of having those conversations, really benefits not just your team, but also, ultimately the people that you work with as well. So again, people, opportunities, and what's next for them.
Thanks, Krystalyn. I can't believe it. It's 7 p.m. I just thank you all so much. What a way to end Shifting Design. Thank you, Dineth. Thank you, Krystalyn. Thank you, Sami. Thank you, Tim. I am walking away so inspired about what you've shared. I think everyone who's attended today is, so I can't wait to put some of your tips into practice and get in on the acronym fun as well, Krystalyn.
And thank you, Lisi. You thanked all of us, but we want to thank you
no, such a pleasure.
Bringing us together. Really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. And I want to take this opportunity actually to thank all the speakers and attendees and our incredible partners, General Assembly and ADP List, who have helped really put together an inspirational week. I'm really buzzing. I can't believe it's over, and I just have so much love for the design community. It's amazing how everyone is just so open and willing to give back and connect and share. So I'm just so grateful for this opportunity.